I'm going to explain a little bit about what multi-level models are. So, in statistics, we're typically interested in explaining variability and how things vary across different groups and different variables. So, if we take the simple example of, say, groups like men and women, we might be interested in looking at difference in pay between men and women. So how can we do that? Well, we can simply calculate an average, and we can see that maybe we get an average pay for men that is higher than that of women. So that's quite easy. And then we have statistics as a tool for assessing whether something is big. I mean, we will always get a number out of our analysis, but it's a number. It's very hard to say whether it's something that represents anything significant at all. So that's where statistics comes in. Now, assume that we go into looking at several groups. So we could have, say, 3 school classes. We have some test results. So we get a test score for each of the 3 school classes, say school class A, B and C. First class, they score on average 50, second on average, say 70, and third on average 45. And then we can employ the same trick to compare these averages to say whether these differences are big or not. So statistics as a measuring stick of what is big. In order to do this, we use chance, and chance is derived out of variability. So that's all very well, but now assume that we have many school classes, say. We want to look at the test result for many school classes, so we might have 30 or 50. Then we will get one number out of every single school class, one average. But in the end, we get all these numbers. We might not be interested in these particular numbers for these school classes. We might be interested in other things, such as for each individual student, how well do they perform considering their background, say the parents' education, socioeconomic status, and so on and so forth. So we still want to keep in mind that there are these differences in test scores across schools. So we take all that variability across schools, and we lump it into something we call the error term. And that error term is a technical term for those things that we don't want to explain. So if we just quickly think of, in terms of these groups, what is it that we don't want to explain? Well, for school classes, it could be, for example, that in every school class, all the children, they have the same teacher, they're exposed to the same teaching. So that affects the performance. There might also be effects of the particular school they go to, the classroom. So we have these exogenous things that affect the performance. But it could also be endogenous things, such as I think we all know what it's like being in a school class and you have a culture of either high-performing students or slackers. So that's going to affect your performance, overall performance. So it's something that sort of feeds on itself. We also have peer groups, and peer pressure. It might be that your friends like to go play football rather than study, or it might be that you see that your particular friends are doing well, you want to perform on the same level as them. This goes for lots of different areas that we're interested in studying in society at large. So what if we're looking at different conditions in different parts of Manchester, so seeing as we're in Manchester, what goes into these differences between groups? There are some natural groupings. We can, for example, consider the wards in Manchester. So what is it that we're not trying to explain? Well, if you've ever been to Didsbury, it's a fairly settled suburb neighbourhood. Everyone is happy, and they live in fairly nice houses. And there's something about Didsbury that make it different from, say, Moss Side. That has a different atmosphere, which again is different from, say, Anchords. So these are different areas that all have their own sort of identity. There's something about that neighbourhood that tells you something about people that come from that neighbourhood. So that's something that we might not want to explain specifically because there are so many different factors that might explain these differences. It could also be that you're interested in looking at happiness, sort of very topical, across the UK. And we think of a place like Glasgow, it's relatively industrial, it's raining all the time. Does that make people happy? Well, we can compare that to some nice sunny place in, say, Somerset or the Cotswolds in England. We have these great rolling hills, green pastures, cows everywhere. There are lots of different factors that might affect people's happiness. But we are using these models in order not to have to explain all of that specifically. So why do we have this data in the first place? It could be out of necessity, that the only way to get to a certain population is to find a bigger unit that lists them or where you can reach out to people. So it could be a company or a school. You might be interested in drug addicts, in which case you might have to go to a rehab clinic or whatever it might be. It could also be out of convenience, simply that it's an easy way of sampling people. But it could also be that you're actually interested in the substantive aspects of different levels of explanation. So you might want to look at the performance of a hospital simultaneously with the performance of the individual physicians that work there. Or you might be interested in the performance of a company and its employees at the same time. And there might be interactions between the place where you work and your particular qualities as an individual. So to summarize, we want to take into account variability across groups. And in order to do this, we take everything that we don't want to explain and lump it into this error term. And we call these multi-level models because we have units that relate to other units in either hierarchical way. So we have schools in neighborhoods. In each school we have students. And we might have also hospitals in different regions. And in each hospital we have physicians and nurses and so on and so forth.